All right.
Put this away.
All right, great. Welcome, everybody. It is 7:31 on April 12th, 2023. My name is Daniel B. Smith. I am the chair of the Lawrence Cultural Arts Commission, and I'm going to kick this meeting off. Actually, Abby, do you want to read your little statement first?
Yeah.
I'll kick it off by kicking it over to Abby.
Thanks, Daniel. Good evening, everyone. I have a few housekeeping items for the Zoom meeting. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel. Please remember to mute yourself during the meeting when you're not speaking. The chat function for this public meeting is disabled. All chats will go directly to me. Unless you are participating during the meeting, please turn your video off. This allows the active meeting participants to be seen on screen. You will still be able to hear the meeting. When you are participating, please turn your video on. If you have any trouble, you can send me a chat. The city reserves the right to mute people or turn individual videos off to minimize distractions during the meeting. Please remember to state your name each time you speak for the benefit of those participating remotely. And now I'll turn the meeting back over to Daniel.
Great. Thank you, Abby. So now I will go ahead and do a roll call vote, starting with Marlo.
Present.
And then Mary.
Present.
And then Dina, I think, said that she wasn't going to be able to join us tonight. So Marciana.
Present.
And Rebecca.
She's also absent.
Okay. And then Jill.
Present.
And Tim.
Present.
All right, fantastic. We can move along to our first real agenda item, which is approval of minutes. First up, we have the March 8th regular meeting minutes. So I don't know if anybody had time to look over those, has any concerns. If not, I'm looking for motions to approve.
So moved.
Fantastic.
Second.
And thank you, Jill. I will go ahead and do yet another roll call vote to approve those minutes, beginning with Marlo.
Approve.
And then Mary.
Approve.
And then Marciana.
Approve.
And then Jill.
Approve.
And Tim.
Approve.
I will approve as well, passing that unanimously. And then we can move on to approving the March 29th special meeting minutes. I don't know if anybody's had time to read over these very special minutes, or if anybody has any concerns. But if not, I'm simply looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Great, thank you, Jill. Can I get a second?
I wasn't there.
I had a hard time hearing that meeting because I was driving, so I'm
Yeah,
going to abstain
sure.
on that one.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mary. I will once again do the roll call, starting with Marlo, and you may abstain if.
I'll abstain.
And then Mary,
Approve.
and then Marciana,
Approve.
and then Jill,
Approve.
and then Tim.
Abstain.
All right, great. I will approve. It will pass unanimously with, except for those abstentions. Great. And that will take us right to public comment, which has not been too lively for the last few meetings. Do we have anybody who's on Zoom? I don't see anybody here in person. My eyesight's not that great, but I'm pretty sure there's nobody hiding. All right, seeing none or hearing none, I will skip over reading the little blurb and take us right to new business. We've had a bunch of busy meetings, and we're going to be kind of reviewing some of that material over the course of this meeting. But first, we had a last-minute adjustment to the agenda. We are moving up item A from the staff report up to the top of new business, just for the sake of our friends who have joined us to talk a little bit about the strategic plan or the master plan, whatever it's called, from Parks and Recreation. So I believe we have a couple folks from the Confluence team, as well as Derek on Zoom, who will quickly introduce us to the work that is beginning.
Hiding on video, just so we can see everybody.
Oh, so cool.
There we
Great.
go. Now we can see all your beautiful faces. So I'll take a quick moment. So I sent you an email today. City Commission approved entering a contract with Confluence, which is going to be a team. Who is with us tonight, and Hank Moyers, who are both from Confluence. They're one part of the team. And then Amanda Golden and Joshua Lapp are both of Designing Local, and they'll be focusing on the arts and culture side of this plan, helping us with community engagement, looking over policies and that kind of thing. So really happy to have you guys here, really getting excited that this is actually beginning to start moving forward, which is great. And I'll let you guys take it from here. PJ, do you want to? Oops, we can't hear you. That darn mute thing.
There we go, that darn mute thing. Well, thanks, Porter. Good evening, everyone. I'm PJ Novick with Confluence. We're a landscape architecture, urban design, and planning firm. We got 9 offices throughout the country, where Hank and I are in the Kansas City office. I'll be principal in charge on the project. So I'll be just kind of overseeing everything, overseeing the team. Hank, if you want to give your introduction and your role in the project, please.
Sure. My name's Hank Myers. I'm an associate principal with Confluence. I will be overseeing the project and being the project manager for this project.
Great. And additions to our team, I'll do those who are not here tonight. But we've got Pros Consulting. Pros is a national firm that specializes on the Parks and Rec side. So they're going to be helping us out with understanding the system, taking a look at where your park system is compared to other cities your size, taking a look at staffing, taking a look at fees for services, programming, all of those things that really make a Parks and Recreation program click. We've done numerous projects like this with Pros. We also have on our team the ETC, which is a statistically valid survey firm out of Olathe, Kansas. They've done work for the city before. So they'll be doing 800 reach outs to residents of Lawrence. And when they send these out, if they don't get 800 copies back, they will start going by phone, and they will start using phone lines, and they will also even go to locations where Parks and Rec facilities are, just to make sure we get that important 800 to make it statistically valid on that. And then on top of that, we will also have what I would call a non-statistically valid survey. We'll have Survey Monkey that will go through, and we'll just have online, very simple. Just if somebody didn't get that formal survey, then they have the opportunity to still provide their input with that. But we'll use the statistically valid survey to really make the kind of direct the big decisions with that. In addition to the Parks and Recreation questions on it, we will also be working with, and you'll soon meet Amanda and Josh, getting questions about the arts and culture side of the city and pulling those questions. So we'll be working with you all and other city staff to get those questions together. That survey probably won't be ready to go probably another 4 weeks, I would imagine. It's from start to finish. It's about a 3-month process. So this initial part is going to be a little slow out of the gates. But with that, I'm going to let Hank just briefly touch on the overall project, and then we're going to turn the rest of the meeting over to Amanda and Josh to talk about their particular component.
Thanks, PJ. So really, this plan is broken down into three separate sections. The first part is really where we do the inventory and analysis portion of the project. This is where we actually go out and we start to inventory all of your parks and rec facilities, as well as your arts and cultural facilities. We'll do detailed mapping associated with that to pinpoint where different sites are located, the conditions of those, and also just make sure that we have visual inventory of all of those facilities. And we will also, during this inventory and analysis period, as PJ mentioned, go through the surveying portion of the project as well, and also hold several public meetings throughout the process to really gather input from the community and those that show up to the various meetings to really provide their input on what they want to see within the community. So really kind of a 3-pronged approach on this, and really in depth. We'll take all of that information and start to synthesize that into different graphics that start to show where these facilities are located and document all of this. Based on all of the feedback that we get, we go into the second phase, which is really where we start to talk about recommendations. This is where we take all of the desires of the community and start to break it down into some of the key components that we'll be looking at for this study. That includes facilities. It'll look at operations and management plans, staffing, financing, or how we financially address all of these items. And then we'll take all of that and start to break it down into a timetable for when these different pieces and parts should be implemented within your community for the 10-year plan that we've got. And then finally, once we get approvals for all of the recommendations, we feel like everybody's on the same page and that we approve the direction. We'll take the third phase is really the final phase of documentation and start to craft the actual report and bring that back to the community for approval and adoption from the commission and all of the other committees that are involved in the process.
Great, thanks, Hank. Hey, well, with that, Amanda and Josh, I'm going to turn it over to you all to kind of give introductions of yourselves and your firm, and just what you're going to help us accomplish for the city on the arts and culture component.
Awesome. Thanks so much, PJ. Hey, all. My name is Amanda Golden. I'm one of the principals at Designing Local, and Josh is one of the other principals there, too. We started our firm in 2014, and we have focused primarily on arts and culture, and we work all over the country. So to say that we are excited to start this project as part of a parks project is an understatement. We oftentimes are seeing arts and culture plans, or public art plans in particular, kind of standing alone and never being integrated into any kind of larger plan. So I think this is a really exciting opportunity for the city of Lawrence and for all of you as commissioners. So PJ and Hank really shared kind of how the major process will play out. And because this is a kind of a sub-subject of the broader parks plan, we're going to kind of tuck into the things that they're doing, but and really follow alongside their timeline. But one of the most important things that we do that we really care a lot about is really spending a lot of time at the beginning of the process, getting to know all of you and other stakeholders who are participating actively in arts and culture. It's really important that we understand the history and background of what the department and the program has done, and also what you're all trying to do and how you're trying to move the needle forward in your own community. And oftentimes with other clients, those are in conflict with what the parks kind of programs are looking at doing. And so I think here this provides a really unique opportunity to kind of move your ideas and your vision forward at the same time that your department is moving a larger vision forward. That could include, expanding or contracting programming at your different facilities, or it could include thinking about how your facilities expand programming in a very specific and niche way. So we're really excited about what's next. We also are going to be able to tuck into that survey. As many of you probably know, in terms of a statistically significant arts and culture survey, that's not something that people are paying for, first of all. So congratulations on really making it a priority and placing some of those questions about your programming within that broader survey is going to be really important here. And we'll really provide you with data that can help illustrate the desire and the need for the programming that I think all of you probably already have ideas about. We're hoping that the public kind of confirms your ideas and your vision, which will give us direction on how to move the plan forward. What we hope to do is to come alongside the rest of the team in different events and ask really great questions. We really do focus on bringing our community engagement to where the people already are and what you're doing. And from what we can tell online, you guys are already doing a bunch of awesome programming. And so it's going to be really easy to tuck in and ask questions of the broader community about their vision for arts and culture in the future of Lawrence. And I know that you all have probably a number of questions for us, and you'd probably rather ask those questions than me continuing to kind of tell you about our process. So if that's all right, I'm happy to open the floor for questions.
Yeah, any questions at this point?
Yes, I don't think I've had enough time to really consider this. I mean, we just kind of got the heads up about this morning.
Yes.
So I haven't really had any time to consider this. There's a part of me right at this particular moment that feels slightly skeptical. And I'm sorry that I feel that way, but we don't have lots of facilities on the arts side. And so when I hear conversations about, inventorying facilities and things like that, I'm going to remain open-minded. Let me just say that. I don't have enough information yet to say how I feel about all this. It'll all be fine, I'm sure. But I have this kind of innate skepticism right at this particular moment in this evening. So I'll say that.
Healthy.
Ms. Marlowe, I am a similar skeptic. I think the part that got me was the sticker shock. Just my experience being in cultural plan. And so I know this is a wider Parks and Rec plan as well as arts and culture. And so I didn't know if there was a breakdown. Like, is there a price that was quoted for the Parks and Rec and then as part of arts and culture? And what is the breakdown? Or did I miss it?
You did.
Okay. But the one thing that I would love to see out of our cultural plan is something that is specific. I'm always hesitant about money going into plans versus programming. And sometimes I feel like plans tend to have catchphrases or like ambiguous, unmistakable identity. And someone has to explain, what is that? Embrace the local, what is that? Where I would love it if there was some specificity or some hardcore, strategy and outcome identified versus these kind of nebulous concepts that we have to kind of put things in their little places. I do see the value in a plan to advocate for ourselves. So I think like having a document that we could take to the commission and advocate for more funding. So I'm not like entirely wary, but I just want to throw that out there, that specificity and clarity and just language, I think would be really super helpful.
I'm afraid you've got a tough crowd to play to tonight because I could have joined the fence sitters here because I was on the last committee that did the cultural plan that never got off the shelf. So I have maybe a bit more than a healthy skepticism about this. I do have a question, though. Many of the arts and culture institutions and activities in Lawrence are done by private 501c3s rather than the city. How will that be incorporated into your study?
Well, there'll be partners that are interviewed, and I hope that we will be able to dive further in after our stakeholder interview to a more broad focus group, perhaps with their boards. That's usually how we approach these things. And I will just say that this is not an update to your cultural plan. I think it's important to delineate that information. We are not updating your cultural plan. We are folding a strategic plan within your parks plan, your broader parks master plan. So this is not a cultural plan. This is not an update to your cultural plan. That information will be background information for us, really great background information. I know it's completed 10 years ago.
Almost.
Right? Almost 10 years ago. Okay. And it'll provide an excellent foundation for our team to kind of jump from, but by no means are we seeking to update that cultural plan. This is really meant to provide you with real strategic steps to move your programming forward. And I totally hear you with all of the special lingo. Josh and I are both planners. So there's a lot of that in our world and a lot of that specifically in the plans that we do, but we'll try to keep that to any policy changes that we're going to make. We won't put it in the document. We're really focused on making really fabulous text and graphics that help things for anybody who's not used to all those acronyms kind of understand that.
We're also planners that deal with personal planner fatigue ourselves. So we're all about creating extremely actionable, I'm not going to call it a plan, but steps to implementing things and really looking at funding opportunities, both inside and outside the community, and really just making very actionable documents that you can pick up and say, this should tell you how to accomplish it, how to fund it, how to get you to the next steps. And skepticism is healthy, and also we're coming in at a good time. You're coming in at a good time here where, we're fresh, we're new with what we're looking at. We don't have any notions of what we should be doing or not. So you're really our ground floor. So as much as we do, given that we're just stepping off with this. So we're excited to get to know you all and come out and visit you and spend time with you in person and online, and get to know your priorities and figure out how we can incorporate those into the planning process, and ultimately so that you can execute them.
And Josh, I also just want to add to that your when we do your stakeholder interviews, your skepticism will be given to us, and you can share all the background information with us that you would like to. We don't have any of that, and we want to make sure that you understand that when we do have your interview, it is an open line of communication. Everything that we hear from you does not go into a document that the city reads. It's really just for us to help inform how we're moving forward. So I hope that it'll bring a lot of trust into those conversations and really help us understand what has happened in the past, because we don't know. But we'll need you to be honest and truthful about those things so that we can know and move forward with that.
Yeah, excuse me, Amanda, I would add too that the first time we'll be sitting down with you all, we haven't set the date yet because the city is still putting together the steering committee. They're actually reaching out to the public. We gave the city a kind of a background on what we expect of the steering committee. The biggest issue was the commitment. I think in that we said you can anticipate 3 to 4 hours at least a month. And we really want to make sure those people sign on, that they're there for every meeting, because time and time again, if we don't have them there at every meeting, if we have a 2-hour time frame for the steering committee, then we spend a half hour getting people who weren't there last month caught up, and it's just kind of a waste of everybody's time with that. And then once that steering committee is set, then our team, including pros, Amanda and or Josh and Hank and I, will be in town probably 2 days. We'll be setting up the kind of speed interviews for 30, 45 minutes a piece, and you all will be included in that, where so Amanda and Josh will be working with you all to understand. You'll have a chance to talk to them about your programs, about your desires, about your disappointments, just to get us all up and running. Hank and I will be more on the park side, and then Leon's probably going to kind of really jump back and forth, because Leon is kind of the guy who helps with some of the financing and ideas on both ends. So he's kind of in between us. And I think it's really important to say that we fully understand this plan is a three-legged stool. It's parks, it's recreation, and it's the arts and culture. And no section is more important than the other. And we're going to try to do our best to make sure that happens, because that's clearly what city administration, Porter, and Derek have expressed to us.
I'm interested, the person on the very end of the table, at the head of the table, who was speaking about her experience maybe with cultural planning. Are you a consultant as well?
Oh, are you talking about me? No, just being on this committee and just being involved with other cities doing different programs. Yeah.
Gotcha.
He also happens to be a fabulous filmmaker and runs a fantastic event through our Lawrence Arts Center. So she is
amazing.
We have a great brain trust here. Absolutely. And I'm with you. I think their skepticism is welcome. And I love what you said, PJ. Share disappointment so we can all learn from that. And how do we want to move forward and build this into this plan? So it's all welcome. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm very much a part of this, working with Parks and Rec right now. So I think it's a good opportunity. I'm still optimistic, but I always am. So, but I actually have to say, PJ and I worked.
Yes.
We crossed paths a few times when I was in Kansas City.
Yep.
So he's very familiar with the robust arts and culture world of Kansas City as well. And I know that you've encountered that more than once with your different planning efforts there. So I think this is a really great team. And I had a nice chat with Amanda before she actually joined the team. And she reassured me by what she said that, traditionally Parks and Rec is not well known for its good work in arts and culture. And we're all aware of that, and we're all being honest about it. But again, this is an opportunity as part of the city's strategic plan as well. So I'll stop talking. Thanks, you guys. Really appreciate you showing up. I know we're going to see a lot more of you in the near future.
Absolutely.
Starting point, and we will definitely look forward to talking to you more in the future.
Great.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, great. I'm glad there was some interesting questions. There'll be lots of time for more. That will take us back into our agenda, though. That was something off the staff report. We can go ahead and return to new business. Item A there is a mural proposal. I believe we have Ramona on Zoom. Is that the case?
Go down to the, no, go down to
Hi, Mona.
Oh, so sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
My full name's Ramona.
Yeah,
Only doctors call me that.
Yeah. Welcome. Thank you for hanging in with us while we talked about some strategic planning. But hopefully everybody here has had a chance to review the proposal.
You want to pull it up and share it?
Absolutely.
We'd like to give you an opportunity to speak to it a little bit, and then maybe if anybody has any questions, we can dive into that as well.
Okay. I also have a really quick Google slide too.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to share your screen, Mona, and walk through that, we're happy to do it that way too.
And maybe not. I don't know how to get through all this Zoom stuff, even though I've been Zooming. Everybody's been Zooming. How do you screen share?
So if you pull up the menu, there should be like a green button with an arrow that says.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, I see. Okay.
Click on that, and then you got to find the window with what you're trying to share, and then you have to click on that and then click share screen.
Okay. Sorry, that's
It is completely understandable in our high-tech world.
I know. Here we go. So you got a picture of my dog. And how many emails I have. No,
we can't see anything yet.
Okay. Oh, okay. Let me see here. Well, maybe we'll just do it the easier way and have her share my stuff. Sorry. That was
No worries. All right. I'll zoom this in too, so it's a little bit easier to see.
Thank you.
Well, maybe not. I can go like that.
If you hit Control plus, it'll zoom in. Control plus on the keyboard.
I think because I'm in presenting mode, it's. Oh, okay. Let me scroll back up here. Sorry, please hold. All right, how's that? Can you see that, Mona?
Yeah, I can see it.
You can see it as
I guess I can just walk you through this proposal is for my rocket grant that I got through the Charlotte Street Foundation. And part of my proposal was that I wanted to do a mural near Haskell. And since I've lived here for so many years, I've been just really interested in kind of transforming this frontage road. That's the road that goes underneath 23rd Street Bridge. And it's also the Burroughs Creek Rail Trail bike. So like the sidewalk that you see is a part of that bike path. And you know, it's proximity to Lawrence or to Haskell it's so near, and it kind of feels to me like a gateway, really. And you know, I just felt like it was really important as a part of my project to kind of reflect the culture that we have at Haskell, the Native culture, and especially like women, like Native women's kind of empowerment. And so that's why I had proposed to do a ribbon skirt like design on these pillars, which you'll see next. And so here's a mock-up of what I would be painting. And the design that you see is something that we use a lot in a lot of our cultural dress and what is called a ribbon skirt. And so women's skirts are lined with these beautiful satiny ribbons, and then a lot of times they'll do fabric applique over the top. And it just feels like a really appropriate area to kind of try to project, you know, this part of our culture and kind of liven up that dark gray area. So yeah, and so that was what I had proposed for my rocket grant. I just kind of been, you know, wanting to place Native art around town, and I thought this was a really good spot to do it at.
Great. Thank you so much, Mona.
You're welcome.
Mona, just a quick question so I know this. You're only proposing on the east side, correct?
Well, I mean, that was just my quick ask. I would like to do both sides, but you know, the way that the other side is situated,
different,
It's
yeah.
behind that, it's behind like that little, the concrete somewhat retain, those
The
things, the separators. Yeah.
Jersey barriers go across, and so you don't have a sidewalk, so it would be a little trickier.
It is. I've been over there quite a few times, kind of surveying, of course, measuring and seeing like how big the pillars are. There is a lot of graffiti, especially on that like retaining wall. I don't know what else to call it. And so, I would, and now that I've got the community arts grant, that will kind of push me along to be able to expand everything that I'm doing with my rocket grant. And so I would like to do the other side, because then it would feel like you're going through a gateway, like kind of like a really cool, beautified.
Okay, and then you are talking about painting. I see you wrote 10 feet circumference. So you want to paint the entire column, not just the facades.
Yeah, the whole thing, just, but the designs would be on the front, like more facing the roads.
Right, okay. I see.
Yeah,
You would do the whole column in some
Yeah,
sort
I
of-
would paint like a solid line around the entire column, but the front facing part that's facing like how you see in the picture, those images would be but you gotta get the whole thing.
Thanks, that's helpful. Yeah, just trying to understand this.
Yeah, thank
you. Oh, you're welcome. I mean, even too, like even putting like a really nice solid color along that back wall right there would be really fun. If, I had more funds, I would probably paint the entire thing, but I just gotta kind of wrangle it in a little bit. It looks like somebody made their home when that guy was building that little wall up. See where that white paint is on the back? They had built like a little tiny wall with those rocks, and he was like living back there, because I used to live on that side of town and I would walk on that bike trail all the time. And I remember someone living up there. I don't think it's anybody's living there now, but just a little.
I live near there too and walk by there often. And there was quite a bit of activity at one time, but it's been quite a while now.
Yeah.
So I definitely have some nice things I could say about the proposal, but I kind of want to open the floor and see if anybody else on the commission has any questions or concerns before I sing your praises.
Really excited. We have a rocket grant. Rocket grants are from Kansas City greater area, so we don't always get Lawrence artists represented. So I'm really excited about that. Mona was also one of the 2 Lawrence artists that had a public art as part of the new airport. So I think she's bringing some great projects to town, and her work is going out as well. So it's exciting.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. I really, really like it.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry. This image is the Habitat for Humanity building in Topeka.
This one. Yeah.
No, this is on 11th in Pennsylvania, and then the next larger one.
Oh, this one is, yeah.
I love the non-traditional kind of canvas nature of this, using the pillars for your canvas. I think you should absolutely do both sides.
Okay.
I mean, that's just my opinion, because it will feel to me incomplete if you don't.
Yeah.
But I love the fact it's covered, it's sustainable. I mean, it's going to stay there for typical murals have to endure. This is really a very cool proposal. And thank you for bringing it. You've made my day.
Right on. Thank you. I'm excited. I've been really, ever since they rechanged that whole area, it just feels like it needs some extra love.
Great. Yeah, I'll say that I really appreciate as Tim was kind of talking about the fact that the columns are a different sort of canvas than people are often working on. I will also say that, you mentioned there had been quite a bit of graffiti under the bridge, and underneath overpasses is a pretty famously common place for people to spray paint, simply because there's a lot of kind of privacy to do graffiti. Having beautiful artwork is actually a great way to reduce some of that. And I will say that, Tim also mentioned that he was in favor of you doing both sides. And this proposal is specifically for the columns. But I think that as a body, we might have additional funding that our recommendation to the city commission is not just to approve this, but also take into consideration the fact that that other space would also be preferable for a mural placement. I think if we approved it as is, that would be that would go outside the bounds of what we're recommending. But I think we can tack on some language, and maybe then the city commission can tack on their own language, just because I agree that having both sides would be great. Anything that brings more shine to Haskell in our community is always something I'm in favor of. So that's all I've got to say. I don't know if anybody else has any other questions or concerns, but if not, as always, I would look for a motion to approve our recommendation to the city commission to approve this mural placement. And Porter,
I'm going to ask for a pause.
Yeah.
And I have to. So Mona submitted this recently, and I was out of town over the Easter holiday, so I've not had a chance to really delve into this. But I do think we need to add a caveat to our motion that I need to do some due diligence, Mona, and just make sure that we have the authority to approve and property. I'm pretty sure it is, but I need to double check and make sure that that's accurate. So I don't want to make a false promise through this process, but I think your support is evident here. And I just want to add that to the motion of, pending further internal review or something to that effect.
Okay, that's understandable. I was wondering because, who knows? I think there was when Van Gogh had done the one under the 31st Street Bridge, that bridge was different than the one that's the K10, because we were talking about trying to paint the other one too. Because you get artists together and we're like, let's paint everything. And so, but then Rick Wright had said that he wasn't sure who owned or who to approach. So I understand that needing to, figure out who to get the approval from.
Yeah, especially as we talk about potentially doing more as well. So
yeah,
the good news, once we find that out, and if it's the information I think it will be, then we should be good to go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we need to try to attempt to make a motion out of this.
I'll let you do that.
Yeah. So Porter, you mentioned one caveat, and we have kind of discussed a second caveat, basically saying that our endorsement goes beyond simply the pillars as demonstrated and extends to the other side as well, potentially the backsplash there. So I would ask if somebody, unless Porter stops me, essentially, I would ask somebody to make a motion that we go ahead and approve this mural proposal with those two caveats. A, that we don't know whether or not the city even has the authority to paint on these structures. So we'll need to look into that first. And then B, we would be more than excited to see the mural go beyond what is depicted in the presentation to the other side and potentially other parts of the underpass. So that's what I'm looking for. I see Porter's frantically writing, but hopefully that's not.
It's okay, recorded. Daniel, I'll make that motion. And you've already laid it out.
Great. Thank you, Mary.
Tim, I'll happily second it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tim, for seconding that motion. I will go ahead and do a roll call now, starting with Marlo.
Approve.
And then Mary.
Approve.
And then Marciana.
Approve.
And then Jill.
Approve.
And then Tim.
Approve.
And I shall also approve, meaning that our recommendation to the City Commission to approve this mural proposal with those two caveats has passed unanimously. So thank you so much for joining us, Mona. The fact that you're doing great work in Lawrence and then also Kansas City and Topeka really shows that regionally now you're just a bright star, and I am looking forward to seeing this get completed and whatever else you have up your sleeve. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mona.
Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks.
Fantastic. So that will take us through to our second and final agenda item under new business, which is item B. And that is updating and finalizing the artist contract for the Phoenix Ward artist. That is Toni. So I will throw it over to staff, and maybe we can take a look at this contract.
We need to get a couple of things ironed out here before I can get this over to Toni. And this includes vendor information. I have this highlighted here as a note to myself to make sure we have the correct vendor information from the city and make sure she's filling all of that out on our side. So we won't worry about this one. But first, I wanted to nail down the number of awards that we would like to ask her to create. And I know we've talked about a range, 6 to 12 in the past. And I wanted to just circle back and see if that is still what you would like to include in this. And I'm sure, Porter and I can have conversations with her if she has any questions about this. And I wanted to also circle back on this July 1st date. Do any of you have strong feelings about any of this? Are we feeling like 6 is too little? We can always bump that to 10. We can really decide how many we want now. What's usually done?
It varies.
Mm-hmm.
How many?
I said it varies.
Yeah, it does vary. And that's what I was trying to remember. I think 6 is the number that seems, because we did one for the case at the Art Center, one for here, one for each. All right, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
COVID distorts reality.
The problem is knowing how many nominations we're going to get and in what categories.
Right. That's
So
right.
have we gotten any nominations in yet at all?
I have not received any, and they're supposed to come to City Hall, but they are for Parks and Rec. So I need to, I haven't received any. No one has alerted me.
And we're saying our deadline is the end of May. Is that right?
Yes, and I can double check for that as well. I don't
did look for social media posts and I didn't see anything from Parks and Rec or the city. Can we get something out there that I could just easily share to the Facebook groups? I think that really helps with the sculptural exhibition. It just makes it really simple.
We can absolutely do that. And I also do think potentially the number of awards we're asking to be created, that might influence the deadline. If we're asking for 6, I think July might be a doable timeline. But, if we're asking for double that amount, we might need to say, maybe the first 6 can come to us by this date and, to use 4 photos and that kind of thing. And then maybe have the remainder submitted at a later date. I think this is more the formality. She needs to kind of have an idea of what we're asking, and then Porter and I can definitely have conversations with her.
Porter, do you remember how many categories there are? Or maybe Abby has it.
It's in that criteria, but also it is on our website.
I definitely have it in a previous meeting notes.
Because often it's dependent on whether we get nominations in every category or.
Right.
All right. So. Go. So, for example, in 1996, the first program, there was literary arts, musical arts, performing arts. Mary Doveton won performing arts. Wayne Wildcat won visual arts, arts education, exceptional artistic achievement, and special commissioners awards. So that goes back to 1996.
So that was 6.
That was 6 awards. And then let's see, what did we do in 2019? Oh, I don't have it on here. Dang it.
I remember that one felt so nice. I don't remember what the number of nominees were, but the program was the perfect length.
That's why 6 is the number that, I see some were just 3. 2015, there were 3: educator in the arts, exceptional artistic achievement, and creative spaces.
In 2016, we had 6 awards: Exceptional Artistic Achievement, Musical Awards, Art Education, Visual Arts, Design Arts, Visual Arts, and Visual Arts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in 2014, 5 in 2013, 5 in 2012. So 5 actually more recently. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So 5 or 6 tends to be the norm.
Do you know,
And yeah, to your point, it a lot depends on the nomination. So there would be, the number of awardees, obviously, plus 1 for the case. The case is changing. So the Art Center, we're going to build a new case at the Carnegie. We actually just got approval to do that. So we'll have a new case that we'll add what the Art Center has currently and then continue adding to that. So we'll just need 1 for that. I used to get 1 for my office, but it wasn't really necessary and it wasn't for public view, so I don't think we need to do that. So, basically awardees plus 1 at least. 6, 7.
So 8 to 10?
Yeah.
In case one breaks. Yeah. A little overflow is good. Yeah.
So we could see if that works for her. I mean, with her work, she's making these now, right?
Yeah.
So she'll be making something that's similar to what she's already making. So my hope is that we're not putting in her, inadvertently exploiting her, so to speak. But
Right.
anything she would make for this, it will be hers if we don't use it, and then she can obviously sell that.
Yeah.
So does that work?
Just gonna sell an award.
Well, no, I mean if it's consistent with her work.
Yes, it is.
I get it.
Is that?
Yeah,
Think that'll work?
I do. And I like the idea of a range as well because it communicates we may need as many as 10, but we don't exactly know yet. I think what's almost more important is this date as well because she does need to get started, I'm sure she already is, but this might be a pretty lofty goal for her. But I don't know her work style either.
Well, if we could at least have a couple done by then so that we could use them. The last time we did it, we were able to use some of the artwork on a postcard.
Right.
And that worked really well, I think, in getting people there and making people more aware of the awards. And giving the artist a little more recognition as well.
Right. I bet you I could just change this language to say half or the majority of awards to be delivered to the city no later than July 1st.
So have you had a conversation with her? I mean, I don't know what her process is, but it just seems to me if you say we're going to need between 8 and 10, when do you think you can get them done? I mean, she may come back to you and say, oh, well, July 1 is no problem, right?
It's true, yeah.
I don't know that this is even that much of a conversation to have at this point, other than just say, hey, what can you do?
Right.
A phone
The
call.
event itself will be in October.
October.
Right.
So mid-October. So, marketing would start September 1 approximately.
I'm trying to talk our new executive director into featuring it in one of the panels in the season ticket brochure.
Oh, okay.
Very cool.
And if that happens, that would go out in late May.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So we would need something.
Well, like I said, she has similar work, so we could potentially, it doesn't have to be the award.
Right.
Per se.
Right.
We're celebrating this artist.
Right. So
We
I'm
can get imagery.
Yeah. I'm assuming that she's going to take, like each one isn't going to be exactly like the other one. Each
Right.
one will have kind of its own personality, right?
Yes, I assume that as well. That's consistent with what she does. Yeah, and I'm sure if we asked her for something very similar to what she is creating, that she'd be able to provide something.
Yeah, I think this gives us good direction, and I didn't realize it was that soon, so that would be needed pretty quickly.
Well,
But you just need photography at that point.
yeah.
Okay.
And I have to
work through it.
I trust you on that side. We'll handle our.
I don't know.
handle your side.
I don't have any power anymore.
Well, once we have images, it would be good. I think a number of us here have avenues that we could push this out,
Oh, for sure.
that are maybe a little bit more non-traditional than what we've had in the past. And to me, it's all about exposure. And so I want to be pushing it, as quickly as we can.
Yeah, I
once
think
we
you
have
all
it.
are key to actually reach out directly to people, and because it's a fair amount of work for somebody.
Yeah.
To nominate, it's not an easy thing, and even we need to go back now and think about this, and look at past nominate. I need to do that, so let me look at past nominations, and because reaching out to those that have been nominated before but maybe not recognized, so I need to get on that too. So okay. This is good. I think this gives us enough direction, and we can work with her, and we can. I think we can be, given what we've just determined. July 1st doesn't have to be too rigid necessarily, and we, like Tim said, we can touch base with her and find out what her thoughts are on that, and then adjust accordingly.
Would there be a possibility for her to produce one for like marketing?
We'll have to ask her, see if she.
If maybe she has one done, or and then we could put it.
Or, the other thing is it could be a studio visit, and maybe you could just get a picture of a bunch of them as just a sample, and, so let me think this through.
That could be really cool.
Yeah.
For the nomination marketing, can we do either the flame, which is I always read, or like a little insert that can come in your bill? That way it goes to every resident, but some kind of communication that's going out. Doesn't have to have, I think what Mary's talking about is the marketing of the event, but I think marketing the submissions, we can just go ahead and start that as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Yes, I've started conversations with Maureen about the flame, and that's lined up and good to go. I just need to get her.
I think it's in the flame.
Okay.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Because we do that annually anyway. We don't do inserts anymore, believe it or not. 'Cause there's a cost to that, because it goes out to 20,000, and we just stopped using those and put those into the flame itself. But let me double check and make sure.
When promotion does go out, would you be able to maybe share that with us, and then we can know that it's there in order to promote?
Yeah,
It's in the April Flame, now accepting Phoenix Award nominations. So let me send that to you guys, and you can even do a screenshot of just the article itself and send that along, or with the link to the Flame. So that's already happened and has gone out. So we'll get that to you all, so you can use that to help leverage good nominations.
Great. Thank you, Porter. Thank you, Abby. It doesn't seem like we need any action. It sounds like you have the information you need to move forward with the contract.
Thanks.
So, at this point, we can move on to old business. First up is reviewing the budget, which I believe is just the every meeting glance at the budget, which we kind of started doing after last year's retreat. I don't know if there's anything wildly interesting that you want to point out, but
This was updated to reflect the Outdoor Downtown Sculpture Exhibition, and has not been updated since we decided how many artists we wanted and how much to allot to that. So this is going to look familiar. But touching base is always good.
Under miscellaneous office, is there opportunity for marketing? Like, is there a little overflow that could be used to do like a sponsored social media posts on Instagram or something about the Phoenix Award submissions, even if it's $50, $100, just getting some additional marketing reach? Is that in the realm of possibility?
Sorry, repeat the first part of that. Yes is the answer.
Okay.
I just need to make sure I understand what you're asking.
In that miscellaneous category, there's like $1,000 there. Do we have access to that for like $100 for a boosted post, so it can go beyond our usual reach?
DLB Smith, yeah, I think that's a great usage of that miscellaneous money. We've kind of touched on that $1,000 line item a bunch of times, and we've never really done anything with it. And the nominations for the Phoenix Award seems like a pretty crucial time to make that money count. So,
yeah, that's a great idea, and we can get that in there. Typically, in the past, when I was more focused on arts and culture, a lot of that went to subscriptions and things like Americans for the Arts, things like that. So that's what we've used it for historically. But it's available for all this stuff, so that's a good idea.
If we are going to throw out a dollar amount that we want to be used to promote the Phoenix Award nominations across social media, do we need to specify that amount, and do we need to vote on that?
No, I think we can figure that out, and we do it anyway for other social media, so it's not expensive, obviously.
No,
you
it's
guys
cheap.
know that. It's pretty cheap, and so we
Yeah.
can get that out that way.
Great. Well, I'm glad that we reviewed the budget as we do every meeting. Unless anybody has any other questions or concerns, we can move on to our second item in old business, which is the program budget memo, which is something Porter has queued up for us.
This is this guy. Do you want me to share this?
Yeah, you can share this. So
Okay.
this is the memo that we submit, and I've been working on this with Parks and Recreation now that TGT is over there. So basically, from our previous conversation last month, we kept the 20,000 flat for outdoor downtown sculpture exhibition, increased community arts grants to 70,000, which you have this year because of the rollover. And then 6,000, which is also an increase, similar to this year because the 3,000 came together, but the thinking being is go ahead and do that so we can actually pay some of these artists more money for their work and have more money for the event itself and marketing and that type of thing. And then the miscellaneous kept it 1,000, so 97,000 for that. And then what we did was, as I told you, we went through all the CIP per the policy. And if you scroll down,
Tell me when.
keep going all the way to the next page. So the calculation there is, these are all so the way one thing I do want to do is look at the public art policy as part of our planning process is this the best policy? Is this what we want to do? These are the kinds of questions I think are worth asking. But currently the policy states that you look at the previous year's CIP and eligible projects to determine the following year's potential CIP. 2% for art is the maximum that may be asked for. It's not automatic. It's not an ordinance. I want to be clear with people. Other cities have ordinances. We have a resolution that says we may set aside up to 2% for public art projects and also for performance venues. So it could actually be a stage in a park is another opportunity for this. So these are the eligible projects. I went through all of them. Those are the amounts available. Total calculation and the 2% for art calculation is that. As part of the unmistakable identity, we're looking at submitting this. Obviously, the commission can say no, or they can adjust that amount, but this is where it is, and we thought we need to, we have not been, with COVID and other things, we really weren't focused on this as much, so now's an opportunity to take a look at it. So this would be something that if you guys are amenable, that's what we would submit as part of your budget for next year.
Well, this made my day. I read that and I was so happy because, post-pandemic, we've lost some ground and we had several years. So it was wonderful to double up this year just because we didn't use that funding. But having this have some gold at the end of the rainbow just makes me so happy. And if that 70,000 for community arts grants was a staple in the budget, I think that would be a wonderful outcome.
DLB Smith, I'd like to follow up Marlo's comment by sort of throwing this back at you because, a while back, some members of this body wrote a letter to the city commission. Specifically, it was concerned with the amount of money that was being allocated to arts and culture in our community, and also the amount of staff that were allocated. And so this, and obviously Porter, who's sitting in front of me, sort of represent moving in that direction. So I'm also very, very happy about this, and also would like to point out that this is your doing. So if you're happy about it,
We got to get it approved first.
Yeah, that's true.
Celebrate.
That's true. But asking is the first step.
Yeah.
So.
And just to make sure everybody's clear, including people listening in or may see this video later, the CIP is a bricks and mortar budget. So I really want to be clear about that. A lot of people think that this money can go to other programs and stuff. Because it's capital improvement money, it has to go to bricks and mortar. And there are very specific regulations on that money. So just for everybody's understanding, that would be limited to actual bricks and mortar.
Do you know,
So can you clarify for me a little bit? I understand it's bricks and mortar, and I understand that the operating budget for the commission is totally separate. Is there any, I don't want to say carryover, but I think sometimes when people look at the investment in arts in Lawrence, they look at this amount rather than the amount that our commission has. And the sense that I get from visiting with people is that there is an interest in increasing the amount of community arts grants, that kind of money, making more of that available to people in the community so that there's more of a grassroots arts and support for local arts, rather than just, I shouldn't say just, because the arts pieces that we have around the city are wonderful, and this is wonderful. I just get a sense that maybe this is more of an outsize use of arts money, and possibly if we're looking at adjusting things in the future, there could be more of an investment in the arts organizations within the city.
I think that's a good thing to bring to this plan. That's exactly the kind of information to share, to be very specific about that. Under the current circumstances, this is this policy, which is interesting because in a way it's very liberal, but it's also very restrictive in saying may. And of course, it's an area, it's probably not a priority for the city commission in general as much as other infrastructure. So it's two very different funding sources. So I don't know how to answer beyond that.
Yeah,
I understand what you're saying, and I'm glad to raise the amount, at least to propose the idea of that. And it's really good to get that in the collective consciousness that, how can we find funding to benefit local artists? And how do we put that stake in the ground? That's part of this education material I'm putting together. If that's a priority, how do we put that into a plan to figure out ways to make that happen?
As I think right now, and I think there have been some quotes in the newspaper too, that people look at investment in arts in Lawrence and they look at that number.
Totally.
Rather than
What's that reality? Other than what's reality?
Yeah.
I think knowing that the police projects, for instance, a lot of people have pointed at that because they don't understand it came out of the CIP. It had to be spent with bricks and mortar. Because it's CIP, it has to last a certain amount of years. So it isn't something that you can have an artist that's not familiar with working in an exterior environment do something that won't last the required amount of time. So it's part of it is education. Part of it is just easy to target bigger numbers. Part of it is hopefully you all can explain that or, get people to me to help them understand that. But it's a dilemma, and I think we need to be clear. This is a proposed request based on a policy, but until the whole budget is approved, that number may not be, realistic. And the policy is lacking in clear direction. This is where an ordinance is very clear. This policy is very open-ended. Again, it's really well-intended. It was very visionary when it was originally drafted, but it doesn't give you a concrete path forward per se. So that's part of the challenge of this too, is that it's a great policy on one hand, but it's it could use some updating. So hopefully that will help, and hopefully that'll be part of our planning process, that they can make recommendations as to how we might adjust that as well. It's an education challenge, really, I think, mostly.
And how is this budget proposed to the commission? Do you have an opportunity, Porter, to communicate that these are two separate pools, and that, you know, I just want to make sure our 70,000 community arts grant is advocated for and isn't overshadowed by the larger number of the 2%. Because people come, you know, they might be a public commenter and they're listening like, oh, the arts have so much funding. And we're like, no, we're fighting our hearts out for this small little piece of the pie. And I just want to make sure that's front and center.
This is in the packet. Okay, so this is the memo. This is, I don't know if we're going to use the exact same format, but this is the template we've used. So this is the type of memo that everybody submits to, you know, budget proposals, which there are hundreds of them,
right,
if you can imagine. So, but this does go in, and if you look, it actually explains exactly what you're saying, is why are we asking for more money? Scroll down to the community arts grants.
Yeah, that was, I read that. That was brilliant. I loved it.
So that's the articulation of why this is happening.
Does it go, like, do you get a verbal opportunity to present your case, or only if a commissioner asks
Typically,
you?
as part of the bigger, you know, budget process, we'll have an opportunity, because the first step is the city manager's proposed budget, recommended budget. And so we'll have an opportunity to, you know, at least defend this, so to speak, in a meeting with them as well. And just to be realistic, there are many of these happening, so.
I do wonder, like, messaging-wise, because I get that feedback that Mary shared just from the public at large that don't understand the difference in those pools of funding. I don't know if on our community arts or cultural arts page on the website there could be some delineation and just talk about, this is our annual budget. It's really this small for our programs every single year, and it's really important to the community. And then this is this public art thing, which is important as well, but that's not the money that we're distributing and managing. I think with your nice communications background, Abby's marketing experience, just doing some messaging on that would be really cool from the city side.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let me
I'm not
look into how to do
best
that.
person to read from a distance, but do we say in there anywhere, do we give the amount that was asked for this year?
Yeah, I think you did.
202,000. The total ask for community arts grants this year was the 200,000. 2,000 and something.
We did say that, you know, in previous years, because not just this year, but I went back and looked, and almost every year, there's 3 times the ask for the amount available.
Right.
Do we I didn't say it in this one, but I said, in previous years, this grant fund only covers about 1/3 of applicant requests.
Yeah, but if you could really give them a figure and say, you know, even with...
As an example?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can put that in there.
Because sometimes that kind of a concrete figure makes an impression.
Okay.
DLB Smith, I'm hearing quite a bit of silence. Does anybody else have any other comments on this this budget memo that Porter has shared with us?
Porter, remind me, how big is the city budget?
I don't know offhand, and I dare not say it.
Big.
Yeah, and we're asking for $97,000.
Well, again, you have to be careful. This is, you know, it's a complex budget.
I get it.
There are multiple funds, so it's not, you know, this is, I think, the biggest confusion is TGT fund is very different from CIP funding, from the general fund. So everybody has to understand it's not like your household budget where you have a savings account and a checking account. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes from. To Mary's point, people see big numbers and they just make assumptions that are often not accurate.
Daniel B. Smith, well, looking at this potential, you know, increase in funding for more brick and mortar projects, and looking at the relatively the smaller amount that we have for funding programming, you know, obviously it'd be nice to potentially shift that a little bit to match up with what people actually want to do with the money. But we also might want to start looking at the projects that we're funding through community arts grants that could potentially be more brick and mortar, and try and be a little bit more little more crafty, so that our dollars go farther. And this, by the way, is an intentional segue I'm attempting to make onto the next subject, which is our committee update reviewing the March 29th Community Arts Grants meeting. So unless anybody wants to continue looking at the budget memo, I think we could talk a little bit about that March 29th meeting, what was decided, how arduous it was, and maybe fill in some folks who weren't able to attend and get some input there. So I will kick things off and just say that the meeting went well. I think everybody who participated, did a great job, and we managed to find a very reasonable way to progress through the deliberation. Obviously, it is a difficult process because at the end of the day, we have to we can only fund so many of the requests. I'm curious if anybody who wasn't able to be there has had a chance to look over the outcome and has any input, including Marla, who was on the road. I'm so glad that you didn't get in a car accident. I guess you weren't driving, right? Okay, yeah. That still always freaks me out whenever I can hear the road noise.
Not being there, I would say that feels like it reflects how I personally voted. So it sounds to me that there was some consensus amongst the group about the requests. So it looks great.
DLB Smith, I will say that following the decision that we made, I stand by it, but I do think that thinking back on the deliberation, I was definitely caught thinking about the difference between the scopes of some of the projects, and I think that some of the smaller projects end up getting kind of lost in the shuffle, especially some of the folks who are maybe newer. And I know we've talked about trying to host some evenings where folks could come by and we could help coach them through that. I definitely see that as sticking out to me as one sort of rocky element, is that folks who are smaller and newer end up not really standing out from the crowd. I don't know if other people perceive that as an actual issue. If we do continue increasing how much funding we have for grants, I could see us maybe having I don't want to say little league, but having a smaller category for with a smaller pool and a smaller cap that folks who don't feel like they can really compete, large organizations could maybe apply to. But I don't know how people feel about that, and I'm literally just coming up with stuff off the top of my head.
You have to come up with a lot more money first.
Yeah, that'll be the first step.
One of the things that I visited with Porter a little bit about after the meeting was maybe the possibility of doing a soft deadline and a hard deadline next time around, so that people who were not familiar with the grant process could get their materials in by the soft deadline and get some feedback and get some guidance on how they might restructure things a little bit maybe and make their grants more attractive.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. And I know that we even had a little bit of technical issues where we needed to check in on some details. So I definitely think that sounds great.
And I think that, I don't know, Porter, if you had an opportunity to make sure that all the grants were...
Is viable the word you're looking for? Or
That's a good word.
Yeah.
Fully
That's a good word.
fleshed out.
Fully fleshed out, but also in line with all of the
Criteria.
expectations, qualifications, regulations of the grant.
Yeah. Of these, I think 2, I'm working with the grant applicants to do that. So we're working through that as best we can on the other side of things.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's where I think that possibly some early action needs to come in before it gets to this point in the process, so that by the time the grants come to the commission to be voted on, we know that every single one of them is fully in agreement with all of the strictures.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
That way they're getting docked for.
And the Creative Arts Commission does that. So when you submit on Submittable, you'll get a period where like, oh, fix this, this is an issue with your budget, or there's that time period. So having that, I like the way you worded that, the soft and the hard deadline, like having those opportunities, I think even for an experienced grant writer, that's super helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree, and we're going to work on implementing this. I want to remind you all, we are not a granting agency. That we're doing a lot of other stuff while also trying to manage these grants, the TTT. So points taken, and yeah, part of it is just also staff time and the
Well, I
availability.
think we have an obligation to the people who are coming to us to serve them in the best way possible.
Agreed.
And if that isn't something that staff has the time to do, then maybe there ought to be outreach to people in the community that would form a pool that would be available to do that. But I think that if we're saying that these are our rules and this is the money we have to give, I think we need to be able to do our utmost to allow people to access that money, but also to do it in a way that is fair to everybody who applies.
Agreed.
And to Porter's point, is there a way, and I mean, this is just kind of my simplistic way of saying it, but is there a way that if we can do this and there's staff time to do it, and we move forward, that we could develop almost like an FAQ, something where we are building a body of knowledge of here's what we've seen, right? Here are prior some deficiencies that we've noticed, so that maybe folks can self-help a little bit along. I mean, I don't know if that's effective. I
think it would be
brainstorming at this
I
point.
think for many people it would be.
Because I hear all of this is a great idea. Yes, I get it. So can we use real-time experience to build a knowledge base then that subsequent applicants can turn to say, oh, somebody did this and it didn't, and they needed to fix it, and I'm doing that. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean,
Part of it is people don't read the rules.
Well, and at that point, then you have to kind of say, well, you're an adult, right? I mean, you can lead a horse to water, as they say, right? I mean, I agree. I mean, I think we should do this, but I think at some point in time, you can't pick everybody up all the time. They have to be responsible for picking themselves up if you've provided. But I agree.
I think an FAQ that's tailored to this specific grant definitely could be helpful and worth the time to create. And, I see your point too, like if you're making very but mistakes on more of the simple parts of it, like, that's not necessarily something we would cover in the FAQ. It would just be like the stuff that's tailored to the specific grant. Am I hearing you?
And I think too, I do see the point, we're not a granting agency, but we do have the grant program. And I feel like these applications were submitted in December. Seems to me there was ample time, and I think it was just that staff turnover. And now we're in this zone where we got our efficiencies back and things are going. So I think there will be ample time in the future down the line. I think this one was just product of the situation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I appreciate you hearing us. And yeah, I think things have shifted in a good way. Admittedly, even the COVID stuff is impacting us. Getting through these agreements has been really challenging because of changes as the outcome of COVID. We have changes with our vendor system. We have changes with our entire financial system. So that's causing us to have to go back and do a lot more work on this. So, there's a lot of factors involved. What I can say is with this is all really good stuff, and I appreciate it. And I agree. We owe this to people to do this right. So we'll do better. We really will. We can build this in. And I think also at some point in the near future to review the criteria for the community arts grants and get that done as soon as possible. So we'll add that to a future agenda item so you guys can go through that. And that definitely needs some updating as well. That hasn't been updated in quite a while. So taking a good look at that and maybe forming a committee to review that would be a good idea.
Daniel B. Smith, just to add one last thing, which I mean, honestly, it's kind of a big thing to end on, but I do feel like in some of the discussions we've had in the past, especially, in some of our retreats, we've talked about how So through the community arts grants and some of the other channels that exist for funding different events and organizations. It seems like occasionally there will be an event that comes up for funding, which seems like essentially a required event, something that the city and the people who live in Lawrence see as being so essential to the identity of our community that it has to happen. And so I do think when those events are coming through the normal application process and we feel like our funding for that event might, dramatically affect whether or not it happens, feels like to a certain extent our hands are tied as far as deciding to fund that. And I know in the past, we've talked a little bit about TGT funding versus general fund. And some of those discussions, and in those discussions, people talked about maybe trying to take some of those events, which are, quintessential Lawrence events that need to happen every year, and maybe seeing those receive like an elevated status, where the city might choose to fund them through general fund as a line item. And I think that's something that I don't think we should solve that right now. And I realize it's a big ask for staff and everybody involved, but I think it's something worth thinking about, because I do think that some of these events are really core to what the city's identity, and that might be a way of separating out some of the funding and allowing the community arts grants to go towards more innovative projects.
Yeah, just a point of clarity, and I don't think you meant this, but you mentioned TGT grants, and then you said general fund. The TGT grants are not coming from the general fund, just for clarity. It is transient guest tax money also.
Sure. Yeah, I meant our funding is all coming out of that TGT pool, versus the general fund, which is unrelated to our funding. So if the city wanted to take an event which was deemed essential and move it over as a line item, they get this amount every year as a line item in the general fund, separate from what we're doing. That would free us up to fund more things instead of having the same events every year, which are kind of a given that we know we're going to fund, come up again and again. And to me, it's interesting. I wonder if some of those events, if for whatever reason we ended up ranking them really low and not funding them, I'm dubious as to whether or not they would actually not happen. I feel like some of those events kind of need to happen. So that is, I feel like another area we can explore. But anyways, as I said, kind of a weird giant thing to end off on. I don't know if anybody else has anything else they want to add. But
I agree with that, and I love that idea of the signature events, and I don't think it's too early. Like, I think this is my favorite time of discussion, when it's in the future and we have some time to strategize on it. So I would love that to be an agenda item. I know Derek has been a part of that conversation before, maybe having him at the table on that one as well. But I think that's a great topic for a future meeting.
I agree.
I think so too, and I think Kim might be a good person to be involved in that as well, because I've had a little bit of this discussion with her as well.
Absolutely.
I think this would be great stuff to put into that conversation of updating the qualifications for the community arts grants, and maybe specifying events but new events, or groundbreaking in a different way, not something that is a staple.
DNB Smith, and I think that obviously, since our funding and the funding that goes to the community arts grants is all on that TGT side, there's also obviously the TGT the TGT fund, and I know that we've talked before about how those are really meant to be sort of incubator funds for new things. So
I disagree. I disagree absolutely with that statement.
Well, I know that with the TGT, applying for TGT funds, there's a limit on how many times you can apply.
That sort of went in one year and it was never enforced because COVID hit.
Right.
And I think that is, as far as I'm concerned, that is a huge point of discussion, because I think you're talking about two very, very, very different concepts for tourism.
So we can have that discussion another time.
Sure.
We should.
Yeah.
And I think those are great conversations to have because I think that is a philosophical approach. We're at a time they were saying you can only apply for 4 years, and they got away from that. So I think
that's silly when you're talking tourism.
And I'm mostly saying that that's what the TGT funding is for, based on what I feel like I've been told, and I don't know if no. So is that still with the TGT?
there was nothing in this year's guideline referred to.
Do we have any idea if that's going to come back at any point, or is that completely?
Yeah, and remember, there's a TGT grant advisory board that's separate. And so we need to pull them together to review those criteria. And to Mary's point, I think Mary makes a really strong point. When we started, part of this is history.
Yes.
One has to remember that part of the reason for that grant program was because people were coming to city commission meetings and asking for out-of-cycle money, and it wasn't fair. And so there was concern about that. So what do? You create a fair process, and that was the TGT grant fund, which was implemented in 2016, I think, the first time. At that time, before COVID and other things, the thought was, to some of these long-standing programs theoretically would get other funding and maybe not need so much support this way. This gets very philosophical. We all know that. So anyway, I think now we're in an entirely different realm, frankly, and a whole new reality with things. So it's overdue. We were trying to get to it last year and just couldn't get to it with the board. So this year we'll go back and review those. What it does say, it does support both sports programming and events and arts and culture, and it tries to strike that balance as best it can. And there's a representative for this board. Mary's done it a couple of times, and others have done it as well. So it's an ongoing tension, frankly, because some believe that it should all go back to refunding the TGT fund by filling hotel rooms. But it does acknowledge the fact that sales tax is part of the conversation as well. The challenge is we can't track sales tax the same way we can track heads and beds and Airbnb. So let's not get too deep into that.
Sure, yeah.
It gets complex, but.
Yeah, I didn't mean to take us completely off road. The only point I was trying to make is that I feel like it would make sense if there was a natural progression whereby events and programming could get initial funding to get off the ground, and then could receive sustaining funding, and then eventually potentially get to the point where they are not coming back every year.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. So that's the dream. So
We're a small market, and I make that argument all the time. Is we're 100,000 population, like attracting high-level sponsors. It's just you come to a huge corporation. They're like, how many are in your city? 100,000, and then you're like, sorry, no. Right. So I think we're at a cap of how much sponsorships dollars we can
Especially
get.
when your biggest employers is the university.
Yeah.
It's not.
But I think it would be cool. Wouldn't it be amazing? Could we all get together with the Transient Guest Tax Advisory Board? Like, could there be a joint meeting that's just on this topic? Because I think it's an hour-long conversation, truly.
B. Smith will. I think that could be possible. Obviously, Tim is our current representative on the TGT Advisory Board, and I think that also the very nature of the TGT Advisory Board is, with the committee, which we'll talk about later, is something that could potentially change. And honestly, everything at this point with the committee, everything could potentially change. But I think that the TGT Advisory Board and the way that functions is definitely specifically something that people have talked about quite a bit. Not to get too ahead on the agenda, because we do have one more thing before miscellany. So unless anybody has any other comments on the March 29th special meeting, I think.
So I have a question. So are we supposed to formally accept the special meeting recommendation on those before it gets sent to the to the city commission, or where are we on that?
DLB Smith, my understanding was that the March 29th meeting was our final recommendation that got passed on, and this is us just kind of reflecting. And I mean, honestly, talking about some of the process stuff is I think that's the best thing that come out of this meeting. I do think the soft opening idea is brilliant.
So
and
then the recommendations will go to the commission when?
As the claim on their agreement. The budget was established by the city commission, so you guys are implementing that program
Right.
based on that budget. So the next step is exactly what I'm doing, is getting the agreements together to get that information out. We've notified everybody, either who were awarded or who were not awarded, and we're beginning to get those. I've been working through those agreements, and we'll get those out. And then each agreement will go through a claims process, so it'll be on a city commission docket, so to speak, as part of our financial process. But these are the grants.
Which means that we actually have no action to take on it. It's just an update and a discussion. And so if there's any other discussion, we can continue that. If not, we already knocked off one of the items from our staff report. And the next one is simply an update on the outdoor sculpture exhibition, which I'm excited to hear.
And yeah, I'm working on that. I've met with 3 of our artists. 2 are very excited because they've never done anything like this before. And we've had to adapt their work a little bit. So I'm working with them on that to get some sketches and ideas together to see what's viable for the locations that we're looking at. I have 8 committed artists. 1 artist, it looks like, doesn't have any artwork. He submitted to other programs and they were all taken. So he said, I'm sorry, but I can't participate this year. So we have a gap there. We worked with Alicia, so she agreed to that. And so she's happy to do hers and schedule 3 events over the course of the year that she can show her inflatable sculpture, which I think is wonderful. So we do have 1 gap, which we could use that funding for another artist, or we could use that funding to look into the AutoCast online map option, because it is about the same amount to participate in that as well. And I can't remember if we budgeted specifically for.
Well,
I think we left some money in there.
Roll up. I believe we did as well, but
I thought we had the audio tour on there.
Yeah, I think it was on there.
Yeah.
Okay, we put 400 in. I need to contact them to find out what. That's probably low. So I'll have to look at that. But
So right now we're budgeted for 10 artists, and you said
10 artists,
you've
and
got
I have 8 currently.
Could have made more grants.
That's what I always think.
DLB Smith, my inclination is not to take that money and bring in another artist, but to use it for the audio mapping and potentially also some other miscellaneous things that we could do to enhance the outdoor sculpture exhibition. So that would be my inclination would be to keep it where it is and see if we can utilize it as we get closer to the exhibition, and see if we can be a little bit creative and use it to raise the profile of the event and make things.
That's $3,500. That's pretty. In our budget, that's a lot.
It is.
True.
Yeah. Is there a budget for any kind of reception? I know we've done that that walking tour in the past, which has been a lot of fun. I can't see back here. Is there- How much is that?
We have $1,000.
Oh, $1,000.
budgeted.
Okay, so that seems ample for that. So
And to add to this too, realistically, with everything, all these challenges I've mentioned, I think the earliest we could possibly do anything would be Final Friday in June.
be great.
If that works for everybody.
Free State
I know
Festival.
You wanted to do it sooner, and I'm just like, that's
I love it.
not realistic. That puts too much pressure on people. So
I love it because I think in the previous years we've done end of May, and that's Memorial Day weekend, and so sometimes people are out of town. I know can't make that. So can we sit on it? Like, are we able to, if we all go home and have some brilliant ideas in the evening about what to do with $3,000, could we come back next month?
Daniel B.
Yeah,
Smith.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, I think for you all, like we have done, we can do the sculpture walk. It's hard to spend $1,000 when you're mobile, honestly. So creating an event would be really exciting and wonderful, especially coming out of COVID, and we have money to, to pay for catering even potentially.
What if each station had its own little sample, food sample, something thematically tied to the sculpture that we're seeing? It would be real. There's some opportunity.
We would need the board's help to implement such things and figure out all the logistics on that.
That's my cup of tea right there.
That. Yeah, if that's something you'd be interested in,
I would love to.
That'd be great. And, I think I love how robust some people are who show up for these walking tours when it's 98 degrees out.
Right.
And I've done my share of sweating out there. And people stick with us. It's amazing. But an indoor opportunity might be fun as well. Maybe we could, I don't know, just throwing out, the Explore Lawrence Visitor Center is a great, centralized spot. And we've met there a couple of years now, where we start there and have air conditioning there, and then check in there every once in a while. Walking up
Check
and
in,
down
do
the
a shot.
street.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great idea, and it would be really fun to do something along those lines.
Cool.
Daniel B. Smith, so for the immediate future, I'm wondering if anybody, I know that with the ranking that we had of the submissions, I believe that below the individuals that we selected to participate, I believe that there were 2 individuals who were kind of neck and neck below that. And so I just want to make sure that the other option would be to try and bring on some other artists. And I'm wondering if anybody, including Marciana, who hopefully is still listening online, is interested in going that route as opposed to trying to do sort of what Marlo and I have sort of hinted at, which is trying to increase the profile of the event and the program through other means. Just want to make sure.
This is Marciana, because I would just say that I would be in favor of moving down and accepting more of the artists who applied.
We need to decide that tonight.
Daniel B. Smith, I mean, I think that
Look
if we did want to extend the invitation to additional artists, I feel like that would be, I mean, doing appetizer stations and all that fun stuff would be stuff we can work on down the road. But I imagine that if we wanted to potentially reach out to some other artists that were down the list, they might appreciate that being sooner. So
I think, let me go back and look at my list here. So you all did prioritize this list based on your selections. We did pull Alicia's piece up. You guys wisely said this just doesn't fit in an outdoor situation. And then I came in and said it's still, part of what we're trying to do. And she figured out a different way to do it. So that's great. So I could just go down the list and check in. It would, then we have several artists that are interested, and if they have availability, we could definitely look at including them.
Are we talking about the same thing?
Daniel B. Smith, talking about the sculpture, the ranking of sculpture submissions, and potentially reaching out to individuals who did not make our top 10, and seeing if they wanted to replace the individual who isn't able to contribute.
Yeah, instead of belaboring things tonight unexpectedly, I can just use this list and work down the list and see what availability exists.
And given the amount that we have, would that be one additional participant or 2 additional participants?
We have 8 currently, so we could add 2 more artists.
If we only had 1 drop out, why did we not have 10?
I don't remember why.
I think there was a natural cutoff there somewhere.
Okay, so we just said 9.
Yeah, my understanding is that the ranking, there was a natural cutoff, and we had enough to potentially do 1 more, and we decided.
So maybe what we ought to do is take the wonderful people that we have and take some of that money and amplify their work and really shine a spotlight on that this year.
Yeah.
DLB Smith, I certainly see appeal in both directions. I think I'm leaning a little bit more towards the who we already have selected and try and do it up a little bit more. But I certainly want to make sure that we at least, even if we don't get a consensus, we at least each have an opportunity to voice our opinion where we fall on the matter and move forward.
Is there a possibility to do, like, split the difference and try to bring on one new artist and then save the remainder to do what we can with that? Because, I mean, $1,750 is a lot to, you know.
DLB Smith, to specifically answer your question, yes, we can do that.
Okay.
That is something we could do. We could bring on one more and then still have a considerable amount to spend on appetizers.
I would want to look at the list again and kind of reacquaint myself with the artists personally. Seems like forever ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So as far as how to move forward, as far as how to move forward right now, since it's 9/11, should we consider? Do we think the timeline works if we bring it back at the next month's meeting, or is that making things?
I would think that maybe if Porter could you ask for availability? Not saying that you're accepted, but could you ask for availability? Or is that like kind of dangling a carrot?
It's different for, yes, I can obviously ask, and it'll be different for different artists, I think. Just looking at currently, I think, the next 2 or 3 artists probably have availability. A couple of these I struggle with whether or not they're applicable, they're worthy of outdoor exhibition. So.
I would just think the natural succession of how we ranked them, if we went to the next one down the list, or next 2 or whatever. We can't vote online, is that correct? Has to be public? If we were decide before then?
Well, given that you've already vetted these, I think we can do this on a committee level.
Okay.
If the board supports that. So I think you've done the work.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going back and, under circumstances saying we want to add 1 or 2 more artists back to the mix. And again, you already have a vetted list, so it's just mostly reminding you of what that is. And I could put together some sort of probably PowerPoint type thing that brings you back up to speed, so you can make that decision and just work with me directly, with staff directly to figure out how to move forward. And then I can contact artists and see availability.
DLB Smith, I'm certainly, I think the notion of doing 1 additional artist plus still having about an entire artist commission worth of funding to make the events improved. To me, that seems like a good compromise. I'm curious if folks who have spoken in favor of using the money towards what we already have think that doing that compromise does that still sound acceptable? Or
I think so. I think I would just defer to Porter's judgment on what's safety-wise, if there's a viable candidate. If not, I'd rather take the 8 that are vetted and safe and good to go.
Yeah, exactly.
So it sounds like the subcommittee could potentially be.
Add 1 if possible. And
if it looks suitable.
So we'll do 9 and then leave $1,750 available for promotion and marketing is what I'm hearing. Okay.
I do agree that there's some, yes, you'll see that there's new sculptures, but to amplify, like your point, Mary, to amplify them and really make it into an event where it is a big deal, because it is a big deal.
And the AutoCast is fun, and
it is.
That's a great opportunity to get it literally in people's hands so they can, even if they're, I've done it where I've been at conferences, and because I have the AutoCast app and they do it in other cities, I can take a public art tour in Philadelphia by myself, or grab a few people from the conference and you want to look at some public art. So I'm that much of a geek.
I am too.
DLB Smith, so it sounds like we've reached a pretty comfortable compromise. Porter, do you want to just keep us updated, or do you want to specifically reach out?
I'll send
to
out information so you guys know, but I think I can work with this, and it is important to get in touch with folks so they have enough time to be ready. So
For sure. Yeah, I think the next meeting's too late.
okay, cool. That's great. Thanks.
All right, great. So if there's no further discussion, we can move right along to the miscellany section. I realize it is, it's getting a little bit late. The first item on the miscellany section is updates about the recommendations regarding boards and commissions committee. This is the committee. We have met since last time this body met even. And there's been a lot of action. The committee has spent a lot of time discussing sort of big picture ideas around why and how the city might condense and reorganize its committees and boards. And the last meeting was the first time we really took a crack at looking at all the committees and boards and then kind of tearing them apart and remaking them, with the goal of getting down from 22 boards and committees down to 10. What that mostly involved was us looking at each of the strategic outcome areas for the city and looking at all of the boards and committees that fall under that area, and then starting off by saying, can we smash these all together? That obviously didn't work for every category, and I'll spare you most of the details. But as far as this board is concerned, we are in the unmistakable identity area, along with the TGT Advisory Board and the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. The general discussion there did begin with saying, let's smash them all together. I was pretty insistent on the notion that the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board and the Cultural Arts Commission could not actually just be smashed together. You can watch the video. Hopefully I don't come off as being too heated. The TGT Advisory Board, since it is a board which is convened once a year, is not in operation year-round, really falls into the category that the committee's talked a lot about as not really being something that makes sense as a fully fledged board. Much of the conversation around that has talked about the possibility of having the TGT Advisory Board be a subcommittee or a task force which is convened annually. And some of that discussion has revolved around the idea of taking the TGT Advisory Board, which is currently, as Porter mentioned earlier, sort of split between sort of the sport, what I will call sporty activities, for lack of a better term, and arts and culture. The fact that the TGT Advisory Board touches on both those things, sort of the Parks and Recreation side and the Cultural Arts Commission side. One recommendation is to have that pool of money have a set split, so there isn't arguing over it, and the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board would then put together a task force that would distribute the sporty funds, and then this body would put together a task force that would distribute the arts and culture funds. This is all just, none of this is set in stone. This is all just stuff we're talking about. I went to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting on Monday because I'd never been to one, and if I was going to be insistent that our two bodies couldn't be combined into one, I thought I would do the due diligence. It was very interesting. They talked about a lot of stuff that I don't think any of us could talk about. I mean, I would be that interested in discussing at great length. It was still interesting. They had a very similar Confluence team presentation, but I'm still of the mind that Parks and Recreation Advisory Board and the Cultural Arts Commission should remain two separate bodies. Honestly, I think the fact that the Confluence team has a separate team as a part of their work, specifically geared towards arts and culture, kind of backs that up. They feel like they are really focused on parks recreation, and they've come in to do this plan, and they need a separate group of people to look at arts and culture. So at the end of the day, with the last committee meeting, we got it down to 10 different boards, just very loosely, and arts and culture and parks and recreation were still separate. So that's really the big picture update there. There's still, I don't know how many months left in that process, but it is ongoing. Yeah, I don't know if anybody has any questions about that. Can watch the footage if you want.
I just feel skeptical again about why would they even think about doing that? What would be the advantage for the city just to have one body we have no knowledge of recreation issues. They have no knowledge of art issues. Like, don't you want your experts? Like, I don't see the philosophy like combining.
There's zero intersection there.
Yeah.
DMB Smith, yeah, and that was definitely, I will say, and again, you can watch the footage. It really came from a place of like, let's just make things as simple as possible and then see what doesn't work as a thought exercise. I don't think none of these proposals that I'm throwing out were necessarily the staff at the table suggesting them. It was other people just sort of talking through things. So other people at the table also pointed that exact same thing out, that combining them is just going to make for, I pointed out that if we combine the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board and the Cultural Arts Commission, we're going to end up with a board with a strange composition, and meetings are going to take forever, and half the people are only going to be interested in Parks and Recreation, and half the people are probably going to be.
We're going to end up with a massive TGT.
Yeah,
I mean, for lack of better words, that's exactly, I'm sitting here thinking about, like all the discussions that went on years ago about why we actually put the 4-year rule in there was because of some heavy-handedness that was taking place by overrepresentation on that group. And so, yeah, all I hear is let's just create a massive TGT.
Right.
And there was also some conversation about having, and again, it was the point of the conversation was to go through these motions and reach the conclusion that we came to. There was a point in which people were suggesting we have a combined unmistakable identity board, and that there could be a Parks and Recreation subcommittee and then a Cultural Arts Commission subcommittee, which obviously is taking 2 bodies and turning them into 3 bodies. So, which is kind of the opposite.
Like an amoeba.
Yeah. So I will say throughout that conversation, where we landed was there's the Cultural Arts Commission and there's the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. So that's where the conversation is. I mean, you can. I said it before, but you can watch the video. I don't think anybody will. Maybe. But one other thing I will mention, because I forgot to earlier, is that at the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board on Monday, Derek was there, and he was debating whether or not he was planning on coming to this meeting, and I specifically told him not to. So the fact that he's not here is because I told him to take a day off because I knew that he was also at the City Commission yesterday and everything. So that's general. I will at our next meeting, I'm sure I'll have more to share. There's multiple steps in the process that we're looking forward to. We will make a specific recommendation out of the sort of nebulous idea we came up with last time that will then go into public engagement. There will be lots of opportunities for shareholders, yourselves included, to have input, and then eventually that will get hammered into something like an actual plan. So, yeah, that's what I've got there. Is there any other questions? If not, Porter, I think you might be chomping at the bit.
Yeah.
Our next item is.
At the last meeting, we talked about doing some education work. One thing, as we met with our consultant group tonight, what I've been advocating is, one, understanding our current arts and culture ecosystem in Lawrence, and obviously great representation here, and there are people missing from this group as well that I know you guys are in touch with. So part of it was I sat down and thought, let me assemble what I would want the consultants to know about arts and culture and the resources available. So that's what you guys received today in a note from us, and we're going to make a PDF and put this on your website. So it'll be on the Cultural Arts Commission webpage. Because this assembles, all this is actually on the webpage currently in a different format. It's also on the iCompass page for your board stuff. But this really assimilates all the information. And then I was adding resources like Americans for the Arts Social Impact Explorer, which is a really great resource I brought to this body before. It has 29 different social impact areas, prison programs, theater programs, a variety of stuff. I'm not advocating that we add programs necessarily, but I think it's really helpful if we really understand what's out there in the world. This body should be really knowledgeable about that kind of thing and to start thinking that direction. We were talking earlier tonight, and yet another topic popped up, which is arts patronage. Who could, is there a program that could be developed, maybe implemented by the city or somebody else to help people understand how do I go out and buy local art? And teach people, because that can be a very intimidating idea, and maybe combining efforts and visiting artist studios. This is what other cities do. It's fairly simple. It wouldn't cost a lot of money, but that type of thing can be very simple and straightforward. So just looking for those. So all this is in here. I know it's late, so I won't belabor this, but if you guys have resources as well, please send them to us. If there's something that you all are tapped into or aware of in theater world or that kind of thing. So much of this is online now. Please send it to us. We're going to create a library of information as a touchstone for people to go back and look at this stuff. And just be aware, I put in Art Space, which does affordable housing for artists. I think that could be really, if we're interested in nurturing that arts community, that's a great place to look and to see about those kinds of projects. We're a little challenged, as Marlo points out, as 100,000 is not big enough to do a lot of stuff. It's really sort of an odd space to be in. So it's not guaranteed, but it's certainly really inspiring to read some of the programs that they're doing with other cities. So this is in your email. Please look at it. Feel free to go through it. All the different consulting firms are part of this. All of your history is in here, and then these resources. And please email us and add to that as we go along. And hopefully we'll be able to talk about more of this stuff. Feel free to dig into it and bring, if you say, wow, this is something I didn't know about, we can actually pull it up and look at it here. We can do that.
Great. Thank you, Porter. Obviously, it is getting late. I'm really glad that we have this section in our miscellany, and I think we'll continue to do that going forward and looking at areas to innovate. Up next, we have sharing of community events. I don't know if anybody has or is attending anything interesting in the near future. I will say that the new, I don't even know the name of it is, the new space across from the post office over on Vermont Street.
Oh, the Art Love Collective?
Art Love Collective. Thank you, Marlo. I've been pretty busy, and I was out of town for your event on the 9th. I'm so sorry. And I mean sorry as in I'm sorry that I couldn't be there, not sorry, apologizing to you. But the Art Love Collective is very neat.
It is.
Cool. Easy to miss. I'm looking forward to when they're able to make the exterior of the building look as funky as the interior, but I definitely encourage people to check it out if they haven't. So if anybody else has anything, go ahead.
I just want to thank Abby for sending the agenda early. It was so nice and relaxing. I got to take my time and look at it.
Yeah.
And a thank you to Explore Lawrence, who's just killing it on the Final Friday promotions. So I don't know if they might be able to come to one of our meetings, but they're doing a great new job at marketing Final Fridays, and I think it'd be cool to have them talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Stan Hurd show was amazing.
I have not been there yet. I
It
need
was
to go see
really
that.
great to see him just as a Lawrence artist for all of time, just shine and show off kind of a different side of himself that a lot of us maybe have not seen. He's maybe hiding for a little while in the fields or whatever, but it was great work. It was good to see him. And he was singing too, so he's multimedia.
He's a man of many talents.
Yeah.
The Indigenous community event, the Indigenous Cultures Festival, was incredible this weekend too. So between that and the art auction, it was such a beautiful weekend in Lawrence, and the weather was gorgeous too. So
Yeah, it was great.
we're really lucky to be here.
All right, great. Well, if there's no other community events we want to share, there is the last item here, which is address the process of how new LCAC commissioners are appointed.
This I added in response to questions that we had at the March meeting, and I think it was just a touch on the process of, we make a recommendation to the mayor, and then what happens after that. Let's touch on this more fully at another meeting. Do you?
Well, hang on, I want to correct what you said.
Okay.
So if anybody is interested, they can go, actually, let's pull it up.
Okay.
So if you can go to, actually go to iCompass, which I think you already have up, and get out of this if you can.
This
You may have to go back.
actually, well, here, hold on. Sorry. That's not what I want.
Just go to City Commission is the quickest way to get to iCompass. So and we should share this. Oh, it looks like, Kurt's sharing it on YouTube, but we should share it as well. Okay, so on this page, this is our main board and commission page and the City Commission page. If you go up and click on Portal up top there. Okay, so this is the main page here. If you scroll down, so it lists all the meetings and everything, and this is where our agendas are, and scroll down, keep going, and you see boards and commissions. So you click on that boards and commissions link, and this is a summary of all the current boards and commissions in the different committees and this different type of thing. You will see that, can you highlight since I'm pointing? Okay, so there's 2 items. Click here to view current and upcoming vacancies or to volunteer for a board. Click here for a listing of advisory boards, commissions, expiration dates. So if you click on this first one, it actually takes you to a page that shows where all the boards and commissions, if there are vacancies, you can find them there, including the Cultural Arts Commission. And it also gives you the opportunity to click on an application right there. It says apply. And this is where the whole process starts. So if you know somebody's interested, they can apply here, and that gets them into the general queue that the mayor can look at. Daniel can reach out to the mayor if there was somebody, Pablo Picasso applies, maybe not the best example, but familiar name. Daniel could say, hey, mayor, I think this artist might be really good for the board. So that's the way that process works. Just real quick summary. We can talk more about it later, but in general, that's how that works. So anybody interested can apply for any board.
I will say Leadership Lawrence is graduating very shortly, and they are a fresh bunch of folks that want to get involved. So I'll be at the graduation, so I could find some artsy people and put a bug in their ear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's just a matter of getting to this. And if you have any questions, just email me and Abby, and we'll send you instructions via email, and you could forward that on to folks.
DLB Smith, and on behalf of all the other boards and committees, I mean, if they're not interested in arts, there's
Right,
lots of other
that one too.
opportunities
Yeah, for sure.
you,
Yeah.
so.
I've included a link to the application and to this this site in the reminders. It's in there.
Cool.
All right, great. So if there's no further discussion of that, we have one last thing on the agenda, and it is adjournment.
Yeah,
So if I could get a motion,
I will make that motion.
I could get a second. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Tim. Anybody who's opposed to adjourning can sleep on the floor while the rest of us sleep.
I just might.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
all.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thanks,
In the back.
Marciana.
Thanks, Marciana.
Thanks, Marciana. Thanks, Porter. Thanks, Abby. It's nice seeing y'all.
Good night.